Okay, so I'm here with Nate of Nate Talks to You. This guy went vegan a little while ago. You want to give any context there?
Yeah, sure. I went vegan maybe, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 months ago at this point. Just from talking to people like Ask Yourself here, and watching people like Vegan Gains give out arguments for why it's unhealthy and why it's immoral. I just like gradually began to see the arguments begin to stack up for why I should go vegan. So I figured, I want to be consistent. So I went vegan. And I feel like I'm one of the very few people in the quote unquote skeptic community to actually go forward with it, where most people well, they tried to debate the topic and they haven't done so hot.
I absolutely agree with you on that. I think that the entire skeptic community basically just took a giant dump when they tried to do that. Like, I mean, we went through person after person there for a while, and now
Mhm.
most of them just hide in the shadows. I think that veganism actually revealed that very few of the skeptics are skeptics. Most of them won't actually question this belief honestly. So yeah, I'm impressed with you, and I'm impressed to a lesser but still worth mentioning degree with rationality rules. He kind of gets it, but he's not gone properly to the conclusion. But at least he's not like stating false things or trying to deny reality. So
Mhm.
that's good.
Yeah, I remember watching their vegan conversation a while ago, and it seems like, I mean, they get all the arguments, they know that they're right, but something's holding them back. I'm not sure what, but at least they understand the argument and they accept it.
In my view, I agree, but in my view, he needs to talk to a proper vegan who's going to really hold his feet to the fire on that. Because he's like, you're talking when he talked to Cosmic Skeptic?
Yeah, they had that backyard
Yeah.
conversation video.
See, that's the funny thing, because I want to have the conversation with him where he's the one in Cosmic Skeptic's position, right? Because he was there being the vegetarian guy telling the meat eaters why they should be vegetarian. If I
Yeah.
talked to him, it would be the vegan guy telling him why he should go vegan.
Well, I know that we follow each other on Twitter, so maybe I can get him to have a conversation with you.
Well, I've DM'd him with a little bit. I don't want to like if you have an in there, then go for it. But I don't want to pressure the guy. But of course, I'm happy to do that. Anyway, let's
Yeah, we'll
get
see.
into this stream. Give me some context on just what this is, how this came up.
So yeah, this is back in October, as you can see on the screen. I was invited to go on the YouTube Saints for a second time, and at some point we began talking about, I guess like McDonald's has some new McRib sandwich they're bringing back, and I decided to mention on there because we're talking about a meat burger that I am a vegan now. So we
Mm-hmm.
had a bit of a back and forth, and it seems like for the most part, Jeff Holiday, he accepts the arguments for veganism too, but something is holding him back from actually making that transition. And I could be wrong. I have to watch the video again, but I think his main argument was that he likes the taste of meat, so he doesn't want to go forward with it. And aside from that, I mean, Nick actually did have counter arguments against veganism. I think they're wrong, but I mean, he did have arguments to bring forward, so we can mainly respond to what he said in this video.
Sure. Well, with that said, let's just delve right into it, I guess. And yeah, what we're gonna do here is when you want it to stop, just start talking, and I'll pause it from my end.
Okay.
And I'll, of course, do the same if I want to talk.
I'm sorry I was late. There was a huge spill at the chemical factory, but the thing was, I was driving by, and when I noticed the ammonia mixed with the carbonite there, doesn't that smell like chicken nuggets?
Nate, do
Right?
you
Right?
Nate, have you ever had a McRib?
Oh, there we go.
Um, I don't think I ever have, and I probably never will because I'm not sure if you should know this, but I'm actually a vegan now.
Oh, are you really? Oh, okay.
You got a perfect in there to say it without having to be the guy drawing attention to it. He put the meat related question to you.
I know that's one critique I hear a lot is that vegans can never stop talking about their veganism, but it's like totally appropriate in this conversation to mention that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that meme is actually a heap of bullshit. I think that it's carnivores who always go, "Oh, you're vegan, you're this, you're that." I don't think that. I mean, I've never seen evidence for it. Let's put it that way. But yeah, in this case, you also just hedged against the meme, so that's good.
I think a part of it is a selection bias. I mean, they
Yep.
see people who are, like vegan activists on social media, whether it be on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, talking about it. I think that most vegans aren't as activisty about it as people
Mm-hmm.
like Vegan Gains and yourself.
Oh,
So
for
they're
sure.
not going to talk about it as much, but they only get that perspective from a few people they see online.
Yep, yeah, I agree. It's total selection bias. Or from the instances where someone does talk about it, but they're not noticing all the instances where someone doesn't, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I also I don't call myself an activist for the record, but
Oh.
because I don't like I make like philosophy content. I'm not really out hitting the streets or like there's a lot of criticisms you would be able to make of my content if the goal were to do activism. So yeah, keep playing.
Gotcha. Well,
Yeah, from
okay.
watching
That's okay.
people like
There's no animal product in any of that sandwich.
probably not all the experimentation going on.
Yeah.
Maybe more human than animal. But yeah, from watching people like Vegan Gains and name off the different, issues that come along with eating meat, and watching people like ask yourself and the name the trait argument. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that argument.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I just feel like it's more ethically
It is funny that it spread that far that random people are just like, oh yeah, I know.
Well, I mean, you've talked to like how many different skeptics and debated them on this topic, so I think that like your name is known in that circle at this point.
I hope it casts a shadow of fear over all of them.
consistent to be on a vegan diet. So for the past, I'd say 6 or 5 months, I've gone vegan.
Well, actually, no. See, that's the thing that's kind of interesting. So, like I've had my own run-ins with vegans, and a lot of YouTubers have.
I had a run-in with Jeff Holiday actually. Okay. It was on Twitter. It's somewhere in 2017 on Patty Politics Twitter, and basically this was like in the lead up to me debating her. I don't remember the exact chain of events, but Jeff Holiday came in with this public comment that it was something like we had emailed back and forth and I was rude to him, and I was just like, dude, like I've never talked to you. I literally have never spoken to you in my life. So I don't know if I got memed on and didn't understand. I don't know if he was just like really wrong but belligerent about it. But yeah, that's my only encounter ever with Jeff Holiday. So he has spoken to me, a vegan, at some point.
Now, I remember that petty politics conversation. That didn't go so hot. I mean, there was that whole UFO portion that just went off the rail. That was you, right? That wasn't Vegan
Oh yeah,
Gains?
I got her to accept it, dude. It took a while, but eventually I just had to get real with her because she was trying to do the whole like intellectualizing it, coming up with weird things, and I was like, look, Patty, just actually picture this situation, okay? There's an alien race. They're very sentient. They can think just like we do. They're way smarter, in fact. They have all of the plant products in the world available to them. You're telling me that on your moral system, there is no issue with that alien coming, stealing your baby, stabbing it to death, and eating it. And I had to put it to her a few times, but finally when I got real with her, she's just like, she tried to be like, she kind of tried to play it off like it was obvious and she hadn't been fighting it. She's like, oh, if that's what you're saying, then sure. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So she was saying that she'd be cool with the UFOs killing her family and stuff.
She was going down that kind of road initially till I got real with her and was like, look at what you're actually saying. There's no way you believe this. And then she said, okay, no, I don't believe that.
And the thing about it, I can kind of understand like the unwillingness to transition to veganism for some people. I mean, they've been like raised in this kind of belief system their entire life, for one thing, and not to mention Patty, doesn't she raise like chickens on a farm? So
Yeah,
she has an
extra
incentive to continue, living that lifestyle.
Mhm.
And if it were to go away, she may lose money that way. So I can kind of get where she's coming from there. It's a bad form of reasoning, but you can kind of get where their minds would go that way.
Yes, no, you can, exactly. You're not saying it's an argument. You're saying psychologically this gives you some insight into why that conversation played out like it did, why she might have the biases she has.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
And did Jeff ever give like screenshots of your back and forth?
No, it was just one comment. Like, in his comment, he implied that he and I had been talking before by email. And
Oh, I see.
that was not a thing that's happened. I've never emailed back and forth with Jeff Holiday. So he must have mistaken me for someone or something.
Yeah, I imagine.
My response to him was just to be like, dude, like, what are you talking about? I don't know you. And I think he might have said some little chirpy insult kind of thing back, but yeah, that was it.
Well, maybe I can contact him and he could provide more insight into what he's referring to. I don't know.
Yeah, like I don't care. I don't hold it against him. I think whatever was going on there, I think it was one of two things. Either I was getting memed on and didn't understand the meme, or he literally just mistook me for somebody else. So I have no fucking idea. I will say though, as much as Patty is a completely immovable object when it comes to this topic, I do like her as a person. She's nice. She's friendly and easy to talk to. But yeah, she's totally out to lunch on this topic. Like, I won't even get into it. It got down to things like her saying, I'm far from a store. It's like, okay, if you were far from a store, and it was a choice of either going to the store or slaughtering someone, which would you choose? Okay, you wouldn't slaughter the person. What's the difference that makes it okay to do this to the animal? So we were at like literally like level 0 Carnist argumentation level for like an hour or two there. But, you know, she's a nice person though, so I give her that.
Yeah.
A lot of YouTubers have had like clashes.
I've
with,
seen them. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is that this is the really crazy thing about veganism is that if you actually do have a really good cogent argument, it's really hard to actually argue against veganism. It really is.
Well, it's actually easy to argue against. All you have to do is be willing to sound crazy, right? I can make a million anti-vegan arguments. I'm going to discriminate based on intelligence, and I'm comfortable killing retarded people. That's a consistent anti-vegan position. There you go. But again, most people will reject it because you're rejecting human rights and saying it's okay to kill retards.
Now, isn't that the Destiny argument at this point?
He's all over the place, dude. Like his last one that he's presented as a serious position was that he's just an amoralist and he doesn't make moral statements. And the
I thought he was like an egoist at this point.
No, it went from preference based, from that, yeah, it was kind of that egoist preference based thing to eventually amoralism. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, dude. He shifts around. I think he's still trying to find like the angle to oppose veganism from that makes him look the least crazy, but he's not going to get anywhere. He resents me a little bit now too. He doesn't really like me. So.
Well, I mean, I have seen this comment section. It's like every other video, you know, Destiny, please go vegan, please go vegan. I can imagine how that would, you know, break down your mental faculties over time.
Yeah, well, yeah, and now he lost this debate recently. It's a long story. It ended in him appealing to a PhD, then a PhD going on and wrecking him and making him concede every point that I called him on. So he's like super salty about that. So I think he doesn't like me anymore. But, you know, I just view him as, you know, he's all right.
I think I saw that. He didn't actually put that video up on his main channel, but someone like mirrored it and put it as unlisted on YouTube a while ago.
Yeah, that is the guy who debated him who put that.
I'll have to go watch that still.
Oh yeah, he gets, and the funny thing is, after all of that, I see him on stream just the other day saying our system is the same as utilitarianism. It's like, dude, you had a PhD literally spell out to you, here's a statement their system makes, here's a statement rule utilitarianism makes. These two statements are each other's negation. The systems logically contradict each other, therefore they're not the same. And he doesn't grasp it. He doesn't fucking get it. So, I mean, I think he's not stupid either. So I'm chalking it up to an instance of bias. He can't admit he's wrong because there's ego involved. That's my...
I don't know. Maybe give him time. Maybe he'll change over time. I mean, I know that I changed, obviously. So, you know, just give people time and they'll switch maybe.
Well, this one isn't on veganism, though, remember. This is on... this was about math and moral systems, weirdly enough. But yeah. Okay, let's play some more.
It really is. It honestly is. It's really hard to, if you are all about full-on argumentation, arguing against veganism because they make a very good argument. They absolutely do. So you adopting it, absolutely. It makes sense to me. It totally makes sense to me. For me, like the thing for me is like the argument is sound.
Mm-hmm.
But I still enjoy the taste of meat. So for me, I try for instance, if I get eggs, all of my eggs come from like.
Okay, so there's like multiple different things going on there. So from a psychological angle, what he's saying makes enough sense, right? Like, I agree with the argument, but I can't, bring myself to change. Okay, I hear that. But saying I like meat from an ethical perspective is obviously not an argument. And now he's going into ethical slaughter, and that also, you know, well, I mean, technically saying I like meat could be an argument, but he'd probably reject the logical conclusion of that argument, and I bet he'd also reject the logical conclusion of the ethical slaughter argument.
Probably. I mean, like, you could argue maybe it's a little more like a more peaceful life for the animal, but at the end of the day, they're still getting fucking killed at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, and you can just
It is a brutal life.
Yep, and I mean, you can just drop name the trait, right? Is it ethical can you ethically slaughter a human? They might try to give you sophistry like, oh, what about euthanasia? So you specify in, no, we're talking about ethically slaughtering a human against their will for a hamburger. Is that something that is moral on your system? He'll probably say no, and then you just drop name the trait, and then they're gonna probably not have a way out of it, and if they do find a way out, it'll lead them somewhere really crazy.
I think part of it is that at their core, they view animals as not being on the same level as human beings as far as like the worth of their life. So they don't really care that much.
Well, it's weird, right? Because I do too. I don't think an animal has as much worth as a human. It's because I care about, you know, consciousness and well-being, and it's obvious to me if I have a choice of living as a cow or a human that I'd rather live as a human, because humans just have deeper mental states. They have deeper forms of well-being than a cow. A cow can't appreciate the universe, right? So I'll agree that a cow has less value than a human. But the question is, do they have sufficiently less value that it's okay to murder them for hamburgers? Now, it's easy to just say yes when you're not forced into a consistency trap. But then if you drop name the trait, again, it's like, okay, so what would make a human of sufficiently less value that it would be okay to eat them? Name the thing that's true of the cow, that if it were true of a human, would justify eating the human, right? Because you can say they're lower all you want, but that doesn't actually demonstrate that your position is consistent. You have to specify what it is that makes them lower to the degree that it justifies eating them.
And that's where they start to get stumped, and they can like backpedal quite a bit.
A lot of people will backpedal at that kind of point, yeah. Most of the time when you get someone on the logical conclusion of their position, they backpedal. Sometimes they stick to it and bite the bullet, but normally it's backpedaling.
Free range chickens. Like I'll spend the extra $1.25 to get free range chickens to minimize the ethical amount of suffering that's going to be happening to an animal as much as I possibly can. But even though it makes sense, I still...
It's not as much as he possibly can. And it's sad when the extent of your moral code is to spend $1 more. I mean, that's a depressing moral view that you'd have to be that kind of person. I know you won't say anything bad about him, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, say whatever you want. But I mean, at the end of the day, I still like Jeff Holiday. And, I just hope that, maybe we can get him into a conversation and he can, hash this out. And maybe after talking to you, he'll start to see a different perspective. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I'm always happy to. And I mean, that's not to damn him. That's just my honest view. I mean, the thought of like this, the extent of how far I'm willing to go to stop a Holocaust is spending $1 more on eggs. I mean, you don't have to affirm it, but I view that as a pretty evil moral system, and just as I view it as speaking to a lack of real moral drive on behalf of the person who said it, right? That's my position, at least. But yeah, I'm happy to talk to Jeff and hopefully get him out of that kind of insane view.
Crave it. I still crave it. So
that's the thing is, I think you can make as many ethical.
I kind of caught there for a minute.
I think that those taste buds override your mind and make you just crave the food regardless of how much suffering goes into making that burger.
I think
that ultimately what'll make this go away, the animal suffering, is when we start making laboratory grown meat.
Yes.
I think that.
Yeah, so you're making good points, dude. Like, what I'm hearing you say is, yeah, there's this psychological effect of like how much can you actually make yourself care about this enough to do what's right, and then you're talking about lab meat, which, it's sad that the doing the right thing is, that it might hinge on us creating lab meat. Like, people should just do the right thing. But I do agree that that's gonna, just descriptively speaking, be a huge advantage for veganism once it's out there.
Absolutely. And this may be a bit of a false analogy. I'm not sure what you think, but I mean, think about a person who's addicted to meth or cocaine. I mean, these people know that what they're putting into their body is bad for them, and that it's unethical to behave in this way. Yet they're indifferent to it because they're hooked on the feeling they get from having that meth or that cocaine or whatever kind of drug they're thinking of taking.
Yeah, I mean, I could understand how someone with training in the relevant areas like brain science or psychology would probably try to draw a distinction between addiction to a hard drug and meat, but like the fundamental principle of getting so sucked into the enjoyment for something that overrides a concern that you have about the ethics of that thing or the health benefits of that. Yeah, I totally can understand that, and I take that to be your core point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That will solve the problem ultimately.
Yes, dude, that is the fucking future. And I've been talking about this for a long.
I have to say, I don't like how much meat eaters love to hear this. Like, yes, like the lab meat, that's the solution. Like, yeah, it is, and it's great, and I'm stoked on that. But your willingness to do the right thing shouldn't hinge on that. That's kind of like an important point for me.
Long time too, and I'm all about this. The moment that we make lab-grown meat taste just the same as meat, or even maybe better, why stop it just as good? Why not make it taste even better than meat, but make it cheaper than real meat? The moment we get that technology to that point, that's a good fucking point to be. I'll be happy to be done with meat.
Well,
yeah, I mean, vegans have no issue with lab-grown meat because the suffering element is removed if it's made in a laboratory.
Right.
No animal is actually being killed or tortured.
Right, absolutely.
What would that? It's funny though because it also does kind of.
And now at this point, Nick made a very interesting argument.
GMO.
Oh, sorry, one sec. Yep, go ahead.
You may have to go back like 10 seconds or so, but at this point, Nick made an interesting argument about, like, I guess, laboratory meat being somehow harmful. I'm not sure where he was going exactly, but I guess he was trying to argue there would be some kind of like negative that would come along with that meat because it would be toxic or something.
Well, I mean, no, it seems to be like the opposite is the case. Like, this stuff is going to be done in a lab, not on a farm, right? It's way cleaner conditions. It's not.
There's no poop. There's no fecal matter around. There's no cutting up body parts and having blood all over the floor.
And the actual meat can have less fat, which is good. So, yeah, I mean,
I think he also raised a concern about anti-GMO people, freaking out over lab-grown meat and having like the whole, oh no, GMO meat in the lab.
Yeah, see, there will be a bit of it'll take a little bit to shift the cultural perception there, but once everyone understands that it's like cleaner, it's actually healthier, and it doesn't have the whole Holocaust thing, then I think that it'll really take off. Either way, regardless of how much exactly it helps, it's going to help massively. There is no doubt that this stuff will help a lot of people.
Absolutely, and I totally hope that in the next, I don't know, maybe 5 years or less, we begin to see that lab-grown meat start to take off.
Yeah, yep. Well, I think we have the tech. It's just about mass production and getting the price down. Yeah, I'll hear out what his argument is, though. Let's hear this.
Oh, argument, right? Now, there are like concerns to be had about genetically modified crops, but in the same, well, I mean, imagine this though. We start getting like lab grown.
It's worth pointing out GMO is like orthogonal to this. Like, there's not, I mean, there's nothing about being vegan that means you have to eat GMO, right? So I don't know if it's just an analogy, but just pointing that out there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know, aren't there some vegans who are anti-GMO because they're like super, everything has to be all natural and spiritual and stuff?
Oh, of course, yeah, dude. Like, our little segment of the community, our little happy philosophy, debate, logic corner of the internet, that is nowhere near the majority of the vegan movement. A lot of the vegan movement has like really weird, crazy beliefs. So, yeah.
That's why I like your side, because you're more pro-science. You care about like the the depth of all the studies and everything.
Absolutely.
And I think we'll get a bad rap about vegans because they see these hippy-dippy people who are on like a totally raw vegan diet, and it's like, why? There's no reason to be a raw vegan or a fruitarian or whatever.
No, and Avi, Dr. Avi, if you've talked to him at all, he is like worried about vegans promoting that stuff because he's very persuaded that this actually is more likely to generate bad health outcomes if you're a raw vegan or a fruitarian.
Oh, probably. I can imagine bacteria or other, issues of not cooking the vegetables properly could lead to all kinds of issues. I'm not totally sure what they'd be specifically, but I can imagine them.
I don't know if it's about not cooking vegetables. See, I couldn't get into the whole thing. I just know there's worries there. Like there's stuff about like having women like lose their period at a higher rate on raw diets, and I think that I'm not equipped to get into it, but it's just worth saying that there are people who really know what they're talking about who worry about that kind of stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of that in veganism. There's a lot of spiritual woo woo. There's a lot of like anti-science, like veganism will like cure all your diseases, insanity. So yeah.
Now, I'm not sure if you already do this, but maybe people like you and Vegan Gains could make more videos on those types of people to kind of, distance yourselves from that side and show that, we're different. We're not like those hippies.
Yeah, it's weird. I haven't put a lot of time into doing that kind of thing, but I would like to. Like even on ethics, which is my area, there's some bad memes, right? Like a very common meme among vegans is that all life is equal. Well, that's fucking insane. Are you telling me that if you have to choose, you either have to kill a human child or a fly, and there's no third option, there's no I kill myself, there's none of this bullshit, that you would flip a coin? Is that your view? I mean, that's ludicrous. That's insane. And, the vegans who care about things like well-being, sentience, who have any kind of even remotely sophisticated view there are going to say, well, no, I mean, that's ludicrous. There's something more important about the human child than the fly. But again, that's a very widely spread meme among vegans. Yeah. I think, honestly, even YouTube as a whole is not a perfect reflection of the vegan community. I mean, I think that there's on YouTube, there's kind of, I mean, maybe I shouldn't make such broad statements, but I think that there's a bit of respect for, for like science and whatnot. Like you'll get ripped up in the comment section, but if you meet vegans in real life who don't participate in these communities where they're kind of like have their feet held to the fire to some degree, it's not good. So.
Well, I mean, like, what are the most popular vegans on YouTube right now? I know that Vegan Gains is pretty popular, but aside from him, who else is there? It's like in the millions of subs.
In the millions? Well, there's a few who are vegan, but they're not actually, like, producing vegan content, right? Yeah.
But would you say that the most popular vegan channels that actively talk about veganism, like, how are they as far as their, like, arguments for veganism?
Okay, well, it's weird because the most popular channels that talk about veganism, I think there's some health channels that are bigger than Vegan Gains. I might be wrong. Like, how big is, like, John Venus or someone? I don't know. So I couldn't speak to the health side. Within the ethics side, the biggest vegan channel I know who talks about the ethics in a meaningful way is Richard, and I'm largely on board with how he talks about the ethics. I guess there's Unnatural Vegan. She's decently large. I think that there's some major issues there. I mean, she has given recently this idea that it's okay to wear leather. I mean, that's... I don't even understand how someone could be considered a vegan if they say that, frankly. So that's
I guess the one argument you could make is if the animal died already, they weren't killed, they just like died of old age, and then you could skin them alive. I mean, skin them when they're dead.
Yeah, I mean, obviously fucking with a dead body is not some like fundamental problem. It's not intrinsically wrong, but no. She was trying to say because the leather boots last a long time that it's appropriate to have bought them. I mean, that's nutty. That's not.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a very vegan position.
No, she was talking about Kalel when she was saying this. I made a video talking about some of this. So. And she's also said things in the past, like if there were a way to ethically slaughter a cow, like implying that if you could like remove the pain, that it would become okay. I don't know if she still thinks that, but yeah, definitely some bad ethics memes there. I don't know, Nate. I'm not sure if I could give you a broad scope of how I feel about how they're talking about it, but I'm happy with what Richard is doing. I like his like general message on ethics.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going.
Created smeat, fake meat, and maybe this smeat is not just like brought up to taste specifications, but what if they start packing it with like, it's like, oh, you know what, here's all the fucking here's all the calcium you don't get because you don't
They probably will
get
do
enough
that.
dairy in your diet. Here's all the niacin. Here's all the shit that you typically don't get. So like, eat this burger, you'll get a daily dose of your nutrients and vitamins. People will be like, well, that's just part of a plot. Oh fuck, there's something wrong with that. And it goes from that weird zany conspiracy like they're turning frogs gay with the rain level shit up through that sort of like, oh well, they're maximizing these crop harvest yields just so they can make money, but all this food is going to give you cancer, even though this really suggests that's actually the case.
Here, could you pause here for a moment?
Yep.
Well, okay.
I mean, now I can imagine there being people who, when lab-grown meat becomes mainstream, there will be people, no doubt, who will be pushing these, pseudoscientific arguments about it being bad for you and,
Sure.
the anti-GMO shit.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't go ahead with it. I mean, there's a massive anti-vaccine movement out there, but that's not going to stop us from pushing vaccines, is it?
No,
No.
no.
Do
good
what's
point.
ethically right, do what's scientifically accurate, in spite of people who are pushing bad arguments out there. Fight them. Don't just give in to them.
Absolutely. That's a really nice way to respond to it, actually. Yeah, I mean, the kind of thing that I would say there is that, firstly, whether people will have that kind of reaction or not is orthogonal to the question of whether it's ethical, right? Whether it's a moral good to do this. In fact, I think that's almost the core point. That might be the only thing I need to say, because what you would really want to look at is, are there so many of these people that it's actually going to be a moral negative to produce this stuff? And I think that, I mean, that's a pretty insane case to make. Like, at what rate do people avoid, vaccines or whatever else was he comparing to vaccines, or was that you? I don't remember.
I don't think he made that argument. He mentioned anti-GMO people, but you could also use the anti-vaxxer movement in that analogy as well. But I think it's better. I mean, it's better to have, like, to go back to vaccines for a moment. It's better to have, some people who are pro-vaccine than no people who even know about the value of vaccines.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, well, exactly. And just with GMO, right? It's like, yeah, there's some people who think some crazy shit, probably. And does that stop the actual sales of them? No, I'm not taking some pro or anti-GMO position. I don't know the literature there. But the kind of point I'm making is that you would have to make a case to make his argument that this is a very large chunk of the population, right? Because the core point is just the fact that some people will have some crazy conspiracies and not buy it, right? That says that's orthogonal to the question of the ethics. And the question of the ethics is resolved by asking, will this thing actually be overall a moral good, despite whatever, negative it has? And I think that it would be very hard to make the case that those crazy conspiracists will be like the majority of society and we won't sell enough of this to reduce animal suffering or, whatever else. That seems like quite a stretch.
Yeah.
None of it's going to go away until we actually develop the replicator. That way, like, when we take a shit in our own house, instead of, like, thinking of, oh, that's going down the pipes, we know it's just going into a plasma incinerator and becoming our hungry man turkey dinner.
You're very big right now.
I am. I have a gigantic face.
So
Sorry about that. I went offline. I crashed for a minute there, but I'm fine now.
Everyone was distracted with my gigantic face.
Okay, so fuck, dude. Yeah, no, your gigantic face like totally took me off the rails from what I was going to talk about. Really, totally.
Well, here's an honest question though. If we ever do get to the point where we can, like, for instance, like, reconstitute matter in ways that we want, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How much of an issue do you think there will be amongst the population, knowing that for instance, our sanitation departments or sewage departments, like, yeah, all that human waste just gets dumped into a vat and vaporized and turned back into food?
Wacky.
Well, suddenly Soylent Green being people, it's like, well, at least it was meat at one time.
Okay, so my basic idea behind this is very simple. Earth's ecological biosphere works on a type of checks and balances, and this is largely an interpretive system based upon how things rise and they fall. One species rises, the biosphere responds by trying to have some way which to call that hurt. It seeks homeostasis, which is a lot of this is an easy way of saying like nature ultimately wants to kill us, which is true. It's totally true. Nature does not like humans. The planet Earth is not our fucking friend, and it is not something that's trying to cultivate us to grow as many of us as possible.
Saying nature wants to kill us is kind of weird. I don't think nature has, like, I mean, I don't mean to be overly literal, but if he's going to base anything on that, it's like, well, nature obviously doesn't actually literally have preferences, and I don't know if you can even make the case that it poses more threats than it offers benefits, or how you'd look at that. So any kind of statement like that is hard to interpret.
Yeah, at this point in the stream, like I kind of just like zoned out for a moment because for one thing, I was a bit drunk during the stream, and two, like I really didn't know how to like absorb what they were saying. It didn't really, make sense to me. Like the argument they were putting forward, it just I was like, how does that relate to the vegan topic at all?
Yeah, I'm not currently detecting an argument, so I guess we'll see.
But biology is also a competition, so with more and more humans coming about, we then responded with, cultivating more and more herd cattle and chickens and that sort of thing. And the result of which has been a disastrous effect on our biosphere, which is in the case of global warming, copious amounts of other ass problems like contamination of groundwater because of fucking feces. There's literally
that's also a very good argument for why you should go vegan is because I mean
Nice.
if you're pro safe
perfect timing to come in with that one there.
Yeah, at this
He
point,
set you up for
I
it.
drunkenly tried to explain the part about how going vegan is good for the environment because of the one argument used is like the cow farts, but also just factory farming in general just creates carbon dioxide that goes into the atmosphere and just enhances global warming.
Oh, and it causes massive pollution of water, right? Like, if you talk about, there's a book that you'd like, because, I don't know you super well, Nate, but I think of you as, like, a pretty sort of data empirical type guy. Like,
I mean, if you watch different videos of mine, I like to cite studies to back up what I'm saying. Like in my
Yes.
recent video about Zakir Naik, I mentioned how women who wear the hijab, like they've done studies, like multiple different studies showing that women who wear the hijab have lower vitamin D levels.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's data, right? Like for
Yeah.
me, I view myself more as someone who likes to look at the principles and the philosophy and things like this. And I have had philosophy conversations with you too. You talk about that fine, but I see you kind of like a data-driven character. So there's a book that you would really like. I think it's called Eating Animals by John Safran Foer, and he basically he's I think either vegan or vegetarian. The book was not received well by vegans, but it was received well by farm people. And the reason is because he doesn't talk ethics. It's an info piece, right? He doesn't make immoral statements in the book. But I get where he was coming from. And this book, the thing that's interesting about it is just how much data he's accumulated. And so I was talking about water waste. One of the interesting points he makes in there, he talks about Smithfield, which is, or was at the time at least, it may still be, the largest pork producer in the U.S. And they had something like 7,000 violations of the Clean Water Act in a year. I'm not sure if that number is right, but it was some ridiculous number.
Well, I mean, I've heard about like animal defecation from cows or pigs, flowing into rivers and oceans
runoff.
and such. And then that eventually, goes to the fish and whatnot. And then it's just, it's fucking up human life.
Yep, exactly. Well, yep. And basically, the kind of conjecture that Foer made in that book was, this many violations of the Water Act, it's very, very hard to believe that that is an accident. It seems like a calculation. It seems like most likely what's going on here is that they've determined that it's cheaper to pay the fines for violating the Water Act than to pay to install the sewage, proper sewage systems at all of these facilities. So, I mean, you'd have to explore that one for yourself, but yeah, it's really bad for the water, and that's, a shady rationale that might be going on for why they do some of this dumping into the water. Could be financially better for them.
I mean, that's business, right? At the end of the day, they want to make a profit, and if one, option is cheaper, they'll go for it. So it's like find ways to incentivize companies to not violate the rules and actually follow the rules, so that way, we'll stop polluting our water system. So yeah, I'll look into this book and I'll read it for myself to, you know, get all the good talking points and such.
Yeah, I think you'd really like it.
Hitting the planet and not adding on to global warming. I mean, like, you know, the
Yeah.
cow farts and the feces are all things that you can, you know, avoid, you know, influencing by not contributing to that industry.
Absolutely, absolutely. But the thing though is that whereas as you possess a very strong constitution, where you can take that responsible and reasonable.
He's just gonna keep doing the same point. Basically, strong constitution. He doesn't have a strong constitution. He can't live by his ethics. It sounds like that's pretty much where he's at with this topic.
I mean, Jeff kind of admits, like, in this very stream that he doesn't have the willpower to make that transition. I mean, at least he's being honest with himself about this. He isn't going to make an excuse for it, so I can admire that much.
Yeah, I do appreciate honesty. It's better than dishonesty.
Mm-hmm.
Choice, and make that choice for yourself, which I applaud you for. Absolutely. Like, I have respect for people who go vegan because of a logical argument. There's nothing wrong with that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. Most people, myself included, are weak. We're weak and we love our meat. We love our meat. So what we need is our science to catch up to provide the satiation of those urges. And then
yeah, I think that this is descriptively true, that like there's a bunch of weak-minded people who will need the lab meat, but I also just think that you shouldn't just accept that you're one of these people. This should bother you very, very deeply, right? Like, I understand what he's saying, but I think that he's got to properly face what's going on here.
I mean, for me personally, when I have some issue in my life, if I'm not strong enough, if I'm not well researched enough, my goal is to, you know, overcome that weakness, to improve upon it, so that way I no longer have that weakness. So,
yep.
I mean, I guess it's like a different philosophy we live by, but yeah, if I have a problem, I want to overcome it.
I'm going with the Nathan philosophy.
And effectively, we can remove the suffering, we can remove the global warming impact from it, and instead we can just be eating what we want to eat. We can have the opiate for the masses. We can be the fat ass people in fucking Wall-E, you know, super happy eating our fucking lab grown meat. We don't know it's not bacon. It ain't bacon, but it tastes just like bacon, so we're happy. Fuck it, who cares?
Technically, it will literally be bacon.
Whatever, just let them float around and be stupid. So,
one question, Isaac.
I mean,
even if we were to totally eliminate the meat industry and make it all lab grown, would you still counter lab grown meat on the basis of it being unhealthy for you?
Well, it depends what you mean by counter it. If it were still posing the same kind of health threats as normal meat, then
that's what I mean. Yeah,
I personally would not consume it. I also have to say I wouldn't consume it just because I'm so used to it. I feel like I've got too many negative associations there that I might not be able to appreciate it. Maybe I'll try it. I don't know. Yeah, I would, when you say counter it, like, I wouldn't tell people, you know, it's immoral to eat or something, but I'd want them to be aware of the health consequences like they are with other foods that aren't great for you, like a Snickers bar or something.
What I mean is, would you dedicate your time to making videos about how lab-grown meat is actually bad for you because of carcinogens and the fat and such?
No, I don't think so. I think that if we won if we ended the animal holocaust, I don't think that any health topic would be enough to just keep me like I'm not that interested in health topics, right? I live like generally healthily, but I don't have this deep interest in talking about health. So if veganism somehow reached the point that the only thing to talk about was health, I probably wouldn't be there talking about it.
All right.
But is there a reason that you asked? Would you?
No, I mean, I wasn't sure. I might. I mean, I do like to post every now and again about how smoking is bad for you on social media. So I do care about health. I see a society right now that's getting increasingly obese. So I want to make America healthy again, basically. So I may cover, you know, I may say, you know, have your lab-grown meat, but, you know, everything in moderation, right? We still have to eat a healthy amount of meat, like, you know, in East Asian countries, how they have like a very small portion of meat in their diet, but it's mostly fruits and vegetables, and they live a lot longer because of that lack of meat in their diet.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you would possibly still make health points just about, you know, what the optimal diet is. But
Yeah, and I mean, I see people like Richard make quite a few
oh, yeah.
videos where he mentions all the health issues that come
Oh,
along.
yeah.
You know, going on a keto diet, for example.
I'm 100% sure I could speak for him here. If the ethics were solved and we ended the animal holocaust, he would definitely still make videos just on the health component. I bet you anything that's the answer he'd give. Because he just has a deep interest in health and nutrition, just in of itself.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that I keep coming back to, and it is something that actually does bother me. I think about it a lot, like how I morally and ethically and intellectually should be vegan, but I'm not.
It's interesting though, because there's a moral and ethical sort of carnivore counterpart to veganism in the. And I hate to say like the homesteader types, but like the people who wish to grow, cultivate, cull, and prepare their own food, right? And that's something I've been wanting to do for years now. I want to go hunting, because another thing too, and this is like when it comes to like the notions of like you take the hardcore animal.
Why someone would want to go just massacre innocent animals in a forest, I have no fucking idea.
Well, I mean, there is a community of people out there. There is, the hunting for sport, culture in our country that does like to do that kind of thing. So I'd imagine, even with lab-grown meat being instilled, we'd still have people that want to go out and, kill a deer or a bear.
Yeah, that is a bad cultural element that we should want to get rid of as much as we want to get rid of, whatever other bad. Like, if we talk about the Middle East or somewhere and, like, the way women are treated, like, we have things here that are just as bad that we do not see, right? It's like going out and just massacring the innocent for fun. That's insane that's a pastime in, I was going to say our nation, but I guess our nations.
But I am seeing improvement. I mean, for example, we see more people saying that, SeaWorld is corrupt because of the way they treat their whales and such there. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing more people talk about how the circus is bad because of their abuse of elephants and tigers and other animals in there. And I'm seeing more people talk about how bull riding is abusive because, I mean, they tie their balls off or whatever. Oh. And they have, over in Spain, they have, like, their whole, bull parade. And it's just a very abusive culture around torturing animals just for fun.
Yeah, no, it's fucking insane. And I agree that the public perception is, slowly but surely tilting. It's super easy to get everyone on board when it's not meat related, right? When it's meat, they all have their biases and they all start acting fucking retarded. But if you just say, hey, SeaWorld gives a whale, like, orders of magnitude less swimming space it should have. Here's a sad whale just swimming around like it's depressed. Everyone's going to be like, okay, that's fucked up. That shouldn't happen. Because they don't have a personal investment in defending it.
I think the reason why is, for one thing, you actually get to see that animal up close. So you kind of have this, like, pseudo relationship with the animal in the circus or in the fair or whatever. That could be part of it. And, for one thing, like you mentioned, they have that investment because they get to actually taste that. So they view it differently. They view it as being like a practical use of that animal for meat, where they don't see it being practical to use an animal at SeaWorld. I think that's a flawed argument, but I imagine what they would say about that.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. And I would just point out, if we were eating whales from SeaWorld, they'd be saying the same kind of, we'd see the same sophistry for whales.
Types who think like hunting is disgusting. We're past the point where we can actually remove human hunting.
What?
We have become ourselves.
Okay, that's an assertion. He doesn't have any evidence for that, right? That's like a prophetic, like, oh, slavery will never go away. We'll see. We will see.
We're a part of ecosystems.
Yeah.
Now, personally, as a vegan, I think there are some situations where you can justify hunting. So, for example, when you have, a deer population out of control, it is justified to kill off deer to prevent them from destroying, the foliage in a certain region.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about this argument? I think that even Richard has said that he thinks that hunting to kill off a population to at least, like, manage it is justified in some scenarios.
Yeah, well, I think that you would have to, in principle, it could be, right? So the way I would look at rights is beings have a deontological right to life, which is eventually outscaled by consequences. If the consequences of of respecting the right to life would be sufficiently negative, then at some point it'll collapse. Yeah. Now, so in principle, theoretically, there could be a point where it would be worth killing a deer for the environment, but I think you would have to make a very, very strong empirical case there. Because, you know, if it turns out, for example, that the reality is like not killing the deer just results in all of these other animals suffering brutally, it results in all of these other bad consequences, we'd just look at it and we'd be like, okay, well, if that's sufficiently bad, then it's something we need to do for the greater good. But at the same time, again, it would have to be a very tight empirical case.
Well, I do know that over in Yellowstone, they had an overpopulation of deer in that region, so they had to actually bring in wolves to the area, which we know would end up killing the deer, to prevent those deer from continuing to destroy that beautiful landscape.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know the specifics of the situation, but I would just have to see, I'd have to see the case for it, and I would just compare it to a case with humans, right? Like, there is some theoretical point where if we had, like, you know, retarded people living out in the forest who were, you know, we, for whatever reason, didn't have some other option with how to deal with them, and they were causing sufficient environmental problems. It's like, you know, if you add enough factors, at some point, I'd say, yeah, like, okay, it's justified to kill them, but I'd be very reluctant. So I would, of course, need someone to spell out the empirical case, and it would have to be an empirical case that if we made these factors true for a human, I'd say it's justified to murder them.
All right.
So I can answer it in principle, but to give you a practical answer, I would need to know the specifics of the case in question.
I got you.
Cool.
Breed other species in themselves. I mean, like, hunters, it's a funny
like,
thing when we get into
what I don't think we should do, to be clear, is I don't think that we should hear a hunter say, oh, it's for conservation, and then just say, oh, okay. I think we should be very, very skeptical when we hear that. And I think that we should press them to provide a very strong empirical argument that we could apply a consistency test to, and which we would then determine is a legitimate justification, right?
Well, yeah, I think that down the road, you know, I think that maybe it'll be a career for some people. You have to have like an official, you know, like conservationist license to go and kill deer. You couldn't just be any, you know, stranger going into the forest and doing it. To like be a professional in that field to do it.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I'm skeptical of just how necessary these things are, but if it turns out they were necessary, then yeah, you'd want it all regulated, and you know, you'd want professionals doing it and whatnot, for sure.
Yeah.
Political, a lot of people think like the hunting side of, for instance, the gun rights crowd, right? Everyone lumps them in with the,
you know, at this
NRA
point we kind of
nuts
pop
like,
into gun rights for a bit, maybe for about 5 or so minutes. So I mean, if you want to watch this part, you know, be my guest, but we just kind of like skip over the meat topic for a bit.
Well, I know, let me check the time. My buddy's going to want his computer back soon, so I'm thinking we'll skip over the gun rights and just go into the last bit on the veganism.
Yeah, I'd go maybe about 5 minutes ahead, then we go back into meat again.
Sure. All right.
You know, honestly, I would charge people for feet pictures, but unfortunately, I was
oh god, that's
flat feet, so I'm not going to make any money in that.
I think we're talking about Mr. Epsilon and his like Mr. Epsilon has like a selling underwear and like feet thing he does for money.
That's fucking weird, dude.
Putting lithium in the drinking water.
Should I still skip ahead some more?
No, let me. I'm gonna put this to
skip 5 seconds ahead thing, or is that an option on Rabbit?
Nope. I tried. I just tried. It doesn't work.
All right.
I'll try to get to like maybe 42 or something.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's an animal construct. War and hatred, bigotry, racism. These are things that you can find right now, analogs inside the animal kingdom right now.
Okay, this sounds
the
like
basic amount.
I hate how this works.
And as
well,
well,
needs to fix their shit.
and I'll offer the devil's lettuce.
My perspective on it is this: we don't have to. That's the whole point. The
Okay,
whole
I think
point.
I must have missed your.
Factor it in and how much of a percentage you think that is. And then when that happens, then you tell me how much you think that fucking percentage actually reflects this overarching theory that suddenly this is actually going to be happening because Alex Jones said so.
Oh, even better thing.
Yeah,
too.
we're at a good
While
spot
you're
right
trying
now.
to figure that
Okay.
out, also ask yourself if you're the kind of person who wants to use a Vox article to say that Alex Jones is justified.
Yeah. And if that's the case, if that's what you're feeling, if that's really where your brain is at, maybe you need to cut your nipples off. I don't know. I have nothing.
Or just crush all that lithium up and then put
Crab-
it into your own water.
Crab90 says, I have no qualms with animals killing other animals for food. What is the difference between with human animals killing other animals for food?
Okay, so that's like level 0 carnism. The difference is moral agency. Next.
Change my mind. Here's the difference, and I'll answer this actually, unless you guys want. Do you guys want to say anything?
I'll chime in as well if you want.
Okay.
And I'll offer the devil's lettuce.
My perspective on it is this: we don't have to. That's the whole point. The whole point is that all of the animal kingdom is ultimately ruled by these basic rules of naturality, and these rules of naturality breed things
this is
like
silly. This is just an appeal to nature, right? All of the animal kingdom is ruled by these rules of naturality. Whatever he's saying, it's like, okay, do you think something's good because it's natural? If not, then it's not an argument. You got anything, or should I just wait and see what you say in here?
I don't have much to add to that
Okay.
particular spot. I mean, I agree it is appeal to nature, so I don't know why that was mentioned.
Sure.
Racism. People are like, well, racism is a human construct. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's an animal construct. War and hatred, bigotry, racism. These are things that you can find right now, analogs inside the animal kingdom right now. The basic perpetual structure of the natural world is nothing but constant amounts of competition, war and destruction, genocide and death. That is what nature is. Nature is a brutal mistress and wants everything.
Hopefully he's going to come around to spelling out why this makes animals killing each other okay, but not humans killing each other.
To compete, and the ultimate goal is to stave off death as much as possible.
Sorry, I framed the question wrong. The question was, if animals can eat each other, why can't humans just be like any other animal?
Yeah.
That's the second prize reward if you don't come in first is death. Nature does not reward failure. Because of that, and because we as human beings have no longer been okay with just simply nature being able to dictate how long we're going to live and what we're going to be susceptible to, we've taken our manifest destiny in our own hands, and we then can decide how we will behave. We don't need it. We don't. I, as a human, still want it, but I don't need it. I could live perfectly healthily without meat. I absolutely could. I just want it.
Okay, I think he's kind of missing the point a bit here, because the question was sort of asking, like, you know, if it's okay for animals to kill each other, why isn't it okay for humans to eat animals? And he's saying, like, you know, nature is a certain way, and, you know, I don't need it, but I like it. It's like, none of that's an answer, right? Like, if you're going to give some reason for why, like, you have to, like, he's got to answer it one way or the other. If he's going to be sympathetic to vegans, he has to spell out why, you know, the fact that other animals eat each other is not some kind of reason for humans to eat animals. And I mean, it seems pretty obvious.
You got to keep in mind, I mean, you know, people like Jeff Holiday, I mean, he's not a vegan. This isn't a topic that he thinks about very much. So I imagine most people that don't think about veganism very much, you know, would not think about these topics in much depth. So,
sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if he did, he could have a more well-constructed, you know, counter-argument to it, but, you know.
Well, I can't even tell if he's counter-arguing or agreeing with it, right? Because the question was, like, basically saying, this changed my mind. It's okay for us to do what animals do. So if he's going to take the vegan position, he has to spell out why it's not okay. And the basic way to do that is just to talk about moral agency, you know.
I think he just wanted to re-clarify his position on why he still eats meat. And he said because he still just craves it.
Yeah, okay, if he's just reiterating his position, that's fine. But it's not really addressing the question that got asked to change his mind, but, you know, whatever.
That's why I still eat it.
I mean, if you look at different countries
I'm
and
a bit
cultures,
like I'll be autistic about this stuff though. Like for me, I'm always very very careful to like. I want to make sure I heard exactly what someone said. I want to make sure if it had multiple components that I've got all of the components and the subcomponents, and I want to respond to it all systematically and make sure that everything I say addresses everything they say. But I understand this is a bit more of a casual conversation, so I shouldn't be holding him to
Yeah, I
that
mean,
standard.
we were all drunk in here reading about, crazy news stories, so we weren't trying to have like a deep philosophical debate.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I take the point. Fair enough.
that have a very low meat diet intake, that they have most of their food comes from, either fruits or vegetables. These people tend to live a lot younger.
I meant to say a lot
offense to the
older, not
Inuit
younger there.
people,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they actually have like a shorter lifespan by like
No
20
offense to
or
the
15
Inuits.
years compared to Americans because of all the raw meat they're taking in.
Yeah, but they're just so badass though, and they're just giant badass. I'm sorry.
Personally,
go ahead.
I'd
No, go
rather
ahead.
have an extra two decades on my life than be badass.
It's fair. I respect your
point.
opinion. It's
Well
fine. I'm
said.
just
Yeah.
I'm an Inuit supremacist, but it's fine. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, aside from that, regarding the whole animal argument, I mean, well, unlike lions or tigers or bears, I mean, we are very intelligent creatures. We understand ethics. We have
Exactly. So you're saying the thing that is relevant to the question, right? So, I mean, even in your drunken stupor, Nathan, you managed to respond coherently to what was actually said there. So, yeah, obviously, you're pointing out we're smart, we can reason morally. The core thing you're saying is we have fucking moral agency. We can think about moral problems. A lion can't.
Yeah, a tiger isn't thinking, is it ethical to kill this antelope right now? No, they're like, I'm fucking hungry. Antelope, kill.
Yeah, exactly.
a very complex morality, whereas these animals don't have that. We should rise above those creatures and rise above our animalistic instincts and realize that, we should treat each other with more empathy.
I like your general way of talking about things. You have a good way of framing things positively. Like we should rise above the animal instinct, or no, we shouldn't let the anti-vaxxers win. We should fight them. Like I appreciate that that kind of attitude towards things.
I try to be very careful with my rhetoric when I'm talking about different topics. I think that some people, they get too buried into the technicalities and all the scientific arguments, and you have to make it a very simple argument to digest for the common man to comprehend.
Yep, absolutely.
Only that, but unlike these other animals, which do require meat to survive, human beings don't require meat to survive.
Now, I'm not sure if you have any disagreement there. I mean, do you think that lions, for example, require meat to live, or do you have any argument against that?
Well, I mean, if you want to be really autistic about it, it's like, okay, well, what they really require are nutrients to live, and
which are found mainly in that meat.
Yeah, like I would not advocate that we go drop tofu packets into the fucking the plains of Africa or something like this. Like, obviously, yes, a lion needs certain nutrients, and those nutrients, the only way we're gonna feed all the lions is if they're eating other animals, right? So, I understand. I think that the need point is it's not as important as the moral agency point, because even if I need to eat another human to survive, I don't think it would justify me eating you. I think I should die. But I definitely agree with you that a lion is what we would think of as an obligate carnivore. I'm so used to sophistry at this point from all of the dishonest people I've argued with that my mind automatically goes to what is the most dishonest possible interpretation that someone could take from this if they want to try to get a one-up on me? Well, they probably say, oh, well, a lion doesn't need to eat meat. A lion needs nutrients. So, if we could synthesize those nutrients, so does it even make sense to call a lion an obligate carnivore? So I'm just hedging against a stupid point like that. But yes, I agree with you.
That being on a vegan diet is totally healthy, if not healthier than the...
But I'd also say these are just generally good points, though, here. You're just distinguishing between... why it's okay for animals to eat animals and not humans, and you're just saying moral agency and need, and then you're capping it off by adding in, and it's healthier, by the way, guys. Don't forget that. It's also
no. I remember later on in this conversation, I do bring up that one infamous paper from what's the website called again? Oh yeah, eatrightpro.org, which is that one health and nutrition organization in America.
Okay, I'll have to see what that is.
Average omnivore diet. So there are only benefits that come along with being a vegan. There are really no negatives.
Well, I guess being in the minority on this one, I'll offer the dissenting opinion. I'd say on the one hand that our physiology is one that has grown to, if not simply implement the benefits of high protein from meat diets, especially cooked foods. Um, it's also one which well, it's the sort of thing like oftentimes you can only actually exist without such as a genuine source of nourishment if you are either in a place which is affluent enough to afford you such an opportunity, or a place in which circumventing that necessity is all you have to do. But beyond even this, while factory farming is itself egregious and horrific, and that it's something which desperately needs reform, to put it mildly, we are nevertheless also a species which has allowed ourselves to become the dominant species on this planet by harnessing
Dominant
all of the
species,
natural
though.
resources at our disposal. Sometimes we've done
Yeah, so like it would be like saying, the white race has become the dominant race by harness. It's like, okay, but is that a moral argument? No, I mean,
It's kind of a
hopefully
might
not.
makes right type argument.
It really is. I also have to say, we're gonna get cut here in a minute or two because my buddy needs his computer back.
All right, then. This part
yes.
doesn't go on much longer. I mean, he finishes his argument, and then I chime back in, then maybe we can end it right there.
Sure, I think that sounds appropriate.
it with grace and tact. More often than not, we've done it poorly. Now, we can argue until the sun goes, until the sun goes down, about whether or not mass production of food is an ethical or a moral thing. But without it, there would be a great number of people on this planet
Very weird to just lump animals in with food.
who would not be able to survive. And furthermore, if we were to suddenly turn our backs...
Whoa, and there wouldn't be a bunch of people who couldn't survive if we stopped producing meat. That's not true. That provide evidence, right?
We would be ethically required, for the sake of their own species as well as every other species on the face of this planet, either to cull the majority of the herds of factory animals that we presently breed for food purposes, or we would be obligated to basically be caretakers for them at great cost with no benefit.
No, this is stupid, right? He's talking about, if you go vegan tomorrow, what do you do with all the animals? Well, no, supply and demand gradually shifts. We stop breeding them into existence, and then their numbers lower over time. We won't have to, manage billions of animals into old age or something like this.
That was what I told him, essentially. This is like, again, he's rehashing the argument from a video he made like a year or so ago, where he argued that veganism is impractical because if you were to go vegan overnight, if the entire population were to stop eating meat, we'd have all these animals, roaming around and they had no place to go. And then I said essentially that, the majority of vegans out there, maybe there's a few that want to do that, but the vast majority understand that with, supply and demand, it'll be a gradual change over time, not overnight.
Absolutely. Yep.
Benefit until the expiration of their lives, while somehow
Another way to put it is he's raising a moral problem that would only be relevant in a world that we're not in.
Preventing them from breeding further, because at present there, I believe, somewhere in the range of, it's been a while since I looked it up, I think it was somewhere between 10 and 20 billion basic farm animals right now, the ones who are farting out all that methane, the ones who are polluting our waterways. Keeping them penned up and culling them for food right now is what they exist to do. Now, if we were suddenly to either free them into the wild or alternately to just, take care of them and pen them up, their ecological impacts would not even be minimized as much as they would be exacerbated for the short amount of time we were able to keep them alive. After that, we've got endless
He's just
amounts
still
of
going
corpses
on the same point
that we have to deal with. Now,
Yeah, he
if
goes
you want
on
to go
for
vegan for your
maybe
own personal, ethical,
maybe half a
moral
minute or
reasons,
so.
that's a sensible thing, and if you can stick to it, yeah, in a sense, I even applaud you for that kind of self-discipline. But at the same time, I do think in a world where food insecurity is still a problem that we actually face here in the first world, let alone those in the third world having to face it on a routine basis, it becoming
kind of an
picky
appeal
eaters
an appeal towards problems type argument at this
emotionally
point.
laden.
Yeah, absolutely, and appeal to problems that are not like happening, right? It's like how does it create food insecurity exactly? I mean, that's a very strange.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the security element played into there. I'm not sure where that came from.
It's like we're feeding farmed animals enough food to feed the third world. You realize that, right?
Political positions is not necessarily, albeit with the best of intentions, perhaps not necessarily one of the most bona fide ways to go about doing so. So that's my minority opinion.
In response to that, Nick, I would say that what you just said is nothing more than a nirvana fallacy. There are really no vegans out there who expect us to all go vegan overnight. I mean, that would be unrealistic.
I've met
Most
some.
vegans say that this will be a gradual process, and as a result of less and less Americans consuming meat in their diet, the meat industry will gradually dwindle in size and eventually
Yeah, this is good.
either go away completely or become so minute that it's virtually unnoticeable. Along with that, I will add, here is a paper from the
Here we
Academy
go.
of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the largest organization of
Okay,
food
I know what paper you're talking about. I wasn't sure who you meant right away.
and nutrition professionals, which claims that vegetarians and vegans are at a reduced risk of certain health conditions, including heart disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, certain types of cancer, obesity, and yeah, because of all that combined, I would say that going vegan is definitely the optimal decision to make if you value living for a longer period of time and having a healthier life.
Yeah, you have a nice way of doing this. It's like you respond to his point properly, don't talk around it, you have a good answer, and then you throw in an extra kind of blow on top of that of like, and it's a bunch healthier for you. I think that was well managed. I think generally you're doing well in here. I think that you're being very clear. I think there's nothing they're saying that's like scoring points on you from that kind of who's winning perspective.
Yeah, now at this point, I think that we kind of just gradually shifted away from the topic of veganism and moved on to different topics. But if you have extra time, you may want to look in the comments section if you can do that. And there was one guy called like Tiger or something. I think that maybe he's like he had a tiger profile picture. And we had like a small back and forth in the comments section. He was an interesting character.
Okay, let's read that and then we'll end on that note.
All right.
Okay, so let me find the video. Okay, I think I can get the video from the Skype link, right? So here and here.
Now, I'm not sure if it was the tiger guy, but there was a different person down there too who essentially said, you know, all those studies, you know, they were selective and, you know, they were all biased or whatever. And it's like, you know, did you even bother to read the paper? This was, you know, just like, you know, it was a controlled test. It wasn't some made up bullshit.
Well, yeah, that's just a throwaway statement. All right, I'm looking at the comments. I see your comment with two. Oh, yeah, I see a reply. So you said, thanks to Jeff and Nick for inviting me on again. Had a great time. It's very polite, cordial, as always. X-Tiger says, you quoted Vegan Gains like he's a valid source of anything. I didn't hear you quote Vegan Gains. I heard you refer to Vegan Gains, and I didn't say that we gave you some reasons to go vegan.
Yeah, but is this an ad hominem, this argument, oh, well, Vegan Gains, he's a meanie, therefore wrong?
Yeah, it's wrong on many levels. It's also a guilt by association. I feel pretty comfortable ignoring you. Okay, well, I'm glad you feel comfortable. Your feelings aren't an argument. But hey,
very
thanks.
skeptical right there.
You dropped a bomb on him after. That's a long-ass response. But hey, thanks for giving Nick someone to smack around with logic. I mean, you systematically dismantled his points drunk. I think you did fine. Like, I mean, it's funny that someone could watch an interaction like that where you've got some guy saying, what did he say? You know, talking about, well, if we all go vegan tomorrow, here's the problems that'll result from that, and then you responding, well, no, it'll be a gradual shift, the supply demand. Like, it's amazing that someone could hear a conversation like that and not track what you're saying and see that you've responded.
Well, I mean, Isaac, look at the replies that you've gotten from your previous debates with meat eaters on YouTube. Yep. I mean, people, if they're an avid fan of somebody, they're not going to fully receive the message you're putting forward. They're going to have this negative bias about you.
Yep.
And you have to find ways to overcome that.
You're right. I agree.
I think you have to make a person feel comfortable with you and not dislike you. And then when they're comfortable with you, then they'll begin to be more receptive to what you're saying. But if they hate you, they're going to block it all out.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, in the context of debate, you can't be spending your time trying to make someone nice to you if you want to really, like, wreck them, if you want to really point out why their view is wrong. So you're at a bit of a crossroads there. Like, I just aim for optimal logical clarity. If I'm trying to talk to someone personally, like you've seen when I talk to someone personally, when I was talking to you before you went vegan in the Discord, it's not a debate. It's not like, oh, I have to worry about what the audience thinks. I'll just try to reason with you, build enough rapport that you don't feel, you know, like attacked. I get that angle. It's just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking to somebody in private, like at their home or whatever, I mean, of course, you don't want to be an asshole to them. But if you're on a stage, I mean, you're not trying to actually change the mind of the person that you're talking to. It's more about,
Yes.
appealing to the audience and
Exactly.
getting them on your side.
Correct. I agree fully. Yep, and I'd also point out that the two views actually contradict each other, right? There's propositions about what you would want to do to maximize your chance of persuading someone on stage, which would be negated by what you would want to do if you want to maximize the amount of people in the audience who will see that their position is wrong, right? So
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay. But thanks for giving me someone to smack around with logic. I love it when Nick does that. Okay, so you respond. Well, Vegan Gains certainly has an aggressive way of conveying his message. That doesn't make his message invalid. Duh. Well, I too was put off at first by his tone. I looked past that and examined the actual substance of what he was saying. Good. This is such basic stuff to have to tell somebody. Watch any video from Vegan Gains and he'll provide reliable sources to back up his claims, such as peer-reviewed studies and government statistics. If you're going to claim that what Vegan Gains says isn't valid, please explain why. And I'll tell you, I have personally seen Vegan Gains back off of points when he's been shown data to the contrary. I mean, people might not like his attitude, but he is one of the most honest guys out there. He will always go with what the truth actually says. He's not going to cling to bullshit, and I've seen him do as much. Like, you can even watch, there's one debate, he had a live debate on sterilization, and his position got taken apart, and he actually just said, okay, I concede. That is the kind of guy that he is, so it's really worth knowing that.
Yeah, I respect that. Now, one more person I wanted you to check out was the guy below that called Kaji, I believe it's how it's pronounced.
Did you want me to hit the rest of that, of your response to him?
My response to
you said a bit more. Yeah, you said a bit more.
Yeah,
what
sure.
Nick said was logical if we're talking about ending factory farming overnight. Yep. However, this isn't what the majority of vegans are calling for because we understand it's impractical. Rather, ending factory farming would be a gradual process. As the demand for meat decreases, so too will the number of factory farms. And with less factory farms breeding ridiculous numbers of animals, the population size of these animals would also decrease. Yeah, super basic, super clear, well said. Kaji. Okay, so we'll give him a read through. So here are some reasons why veganism is not sound. There are two kinds of vitamin A. Okay, that's health claims. I don't know about the health claims. You simply cannot get the amounts of collagen. So this is health claims. I don't know how to deal with all the health claims.
All right.
Then.
Oh, no, we might want to check the one called about like the bias studies one. He had a little bit higher than that.
Yeah, these are extraordinarily biased studies you're referring to, compared to the ideal vegan diet, full of expensive supplements and all that. Well, he's just asserting that. What studies are you talking about? To the average,
no citation provided at all. No mention of anything.
No, not at all. And I'll just tell you, like, I don't know how to debunk all the health sophistry, but the stuff with, like, vitamin A, like, we can get it from meat, the kind we get from plants from the sun, we need both for proper brain and organ function. Like, there's not any, I don't know how all of those break down, but there's a lot of sophistry on this. Like, they'll say, like, oh, one form of a given nutrient isn't as bioavailable, and then you say, okay, it's not, but let's factor in the fact that it's less bioavailable and see how much it would take you to get your RDA, and it's some hilariously easy amount to get. Like, the health points are not strong, and that's why the consensus is scientifically that you can be healthy on a vegan diet. That's why you get that peer-reviewed statement from the largest body of nutrition professionals.
Absolutely, and even if you had to have a supplement for vitamin A or whatever, I mean, like a supplement bottle will cost you like $2 at the the store. That's a lot cheaper than buying like a steak every week, which is like I don't know $10 or more or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak too much on the health. Like, I would just go with what the consensus says there, and then if people think that they can argue the health, there's people in the movement who specialize in that. I stick primarily to the ethics, but yeah, point taken. Okay, that's not a fair study. No idea what study he's talking about. No citation. There has yet to be a single study on veganism that follows proper procedure, provide evidence, and examines a wide variety of diets on their merits. Provide evidence. Only studies that assert veganism is the best while showing nothing but further assertions and flawed methodology. So he's just saying words here. It's just words like further assertions, flawed methodologies, follow proper procedure, not fair study. Okay, I hear a lot of words. I see not a single citation. I don't know what you're talking about or why it's wrong. If you even cite the study, you'd still have to spell out what exactly was done wrong there.
That's what annoys me. These people are so confident that they're right, but they don't even bother to like question, hey, like, should I maybe verify what I'm saying? Should I provide a citation to make sure that what I'm saying adds up with reality? It's like, no, they don't care.
No.
They don't want to say anything to dismiss what you're saying, even if on some level they know they're wrong.
Yep. Oh, no, I totally agree. I mean, this could be like a kid also. This guy could be like 15. Like, who the fuck knows? And then he said at the end, at no point is veganism treated as an untested hypothesis, which is all it is at this point. Well, I mean, yeah. So he's yeah, it's just baseless assertions. All right, well, we've gone through everything. It's been very nice talking with you. I'm always happy to chat with you. Any kind of closing
likewise.
words, anything to say? I will speak to your stream. I think you did very well in there. I think that you were cogent, you were clear, you were drunk, but it didn't seem to matter. And yeah, you responded to everything completely well, in my view. You should make videos on veganism if it's something you come around to. You could make good content.
I've considered it. I just don't feel like I'm well researched enough on the topic to be like the voice of veganism. I think that people like yourself with the ethical argument and people like Richard with, the health argument would do a much more, structured, efficient job than I would, at least right now.
Well, if you ever hit that point, definitely, yeah.
I guess I'll shout my own channel out if that's okay with you.
100%.
I have a video coming out, which I hope comes out this week, which is about, I'm sure you've seen the Jake Paul documentary by Shane Dawson.
No, I haven't.
Oh, well, it's been blowing up recently. Well, anyway, I've been looking into, Shane's, past work, and he used to make a whole bunch of videos promoting conspiracy theories. So he made one on, 9/11, for example, being an inside job and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be replying to one of these videos, and it's like, why are people listening to this guy, Shane Dawson, on all these, complex topics when he's so easily tricked by things that can be explained very easily?
Yep.
He was getting tricked by you ever heard the reptilian shapeshifter arguments out there about your eyes glitching in the video?
Yep.
Yeah, he fell for that. It's like, dude, you're a guy who spent the past decade or so in the video industry making videos. I mean, you should know better about how these kinds of gaffes work in video production.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't know if he's just very gullible or he's being deceptive. I don't know, but I wanted to debunk his claims because he has a very young following of 12-year-old kids who may get led down the path of becoming a flat earther if they hear him out and believe him.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, it's anyone who believes in David Icke's reptilian shapeshifter theories should not be taken seriously on anything. I don't care if that's some kind of fallacy there of me saying, therefore everything else they're saying is wrong. But yeah, therefore everything else they're saying is wrong. Don't listen to them.
Now I would have no issue with Shane Dawson, introducing people to these conspiracies if he would at least provide the counter argument and explain why they're wrong.
Exactly.
But what Shane will do is he will, he'll say, oh, this video is just for, fun, it's entertainment. But he will at no point bother to provide a counter argument to what he's saying. He'll be like, here's the argument. Whoa, wasn't that freaky? And then next conspiracy.
Yep.
And it's like, what is the takeaway? It sounds like he's trying to promote them, not try to show why they're wrong.
Yep, that's what conspiracy channels are like, man.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, this has been a great experience. If you ever do anything else like this on air, just let me know, and we can do another review.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, I guess I'm going to go over to OBS and stop the stream. Go follow Nathan. Nate Talks to You on YouTube. He has tons of great content. Very much worth watching. All right. Have a good one, guys.